So, okay, my lights totally just flickered. So, just now, I don't know if the camera caught that. My heart's pounding just a tiny bit. Hey everyone, Shaun Stevenson here, author of the Throne series, and today's a good day because I get to review one of my favorite books. I was so nervous that when I reread this book after probably like 10 or 12, longer than that actually, maybe 20 years, this book would not hold up. I have read this book multiple times, and I actually think it is the book that I've read the most times out of possibly any other book except maybe some of the Chronicles of Narnia books. I might have read some of those a tiny bit more times than this book, but the book I'm talking about is Forbidden Doors, book number 1, The Society. Like I said, I read this book a bunch of times a long time ago. So it probably has been like 15 to 20 years since I read this book. These books came out in the 1990s, and this one in particular came out in 1994. They re-released the series with an updated edition, which, let me grab that. So they re-released this book in an updated edition in the early 2000s, which is a very early 2000s version of this kind of a book. I don't really love the new covers as much as the old ones. I mean, they work, and it's nice to have the newer copies of these as well as the older ones. This is probably one of the series I fan out about the most. I'm not gonna lie. I loved these when I was younger. So it is no surprise that I was really excited to read this one again. So, Forbidden Doors, book number 1, The Society. This is an interesting reread because I did not realize until this year that these books came out at kind of the height of the Fear Street hype. Now, here's the thing about the Fear Street hype. This series, Forbidden Doors, is a Christian book series, and it's a Christian horror book series for YA. And I just kept thinking when I was reading Fear Street, I thought, wait a minute. These are very similar to another book series I have read. And immediately I remembered, oh, Forbidden Doors is kind of like these Fear Street books, only the Forbidden Doors books are a Christian series. So I immediately just kept thinking about how I had never read these books in light of Fear Street before. Now, to set these up, these books are what are part of the spiritual warfare genre of Christian fiction, which if you don't know what spiritual warfare is this view in Christianity that angels and demons fight each other and that there's this epic battle going on that we cannot see with our own eyes. It's an invisible battle that happens in what's called the spiritual realm. So the people who are Christians can also fight in this battle of angels versus demons. And Christians have power in the name of Jesus to rebuke Satan and demons and all of these things. So that's like the genre we're coming from. Now, where this genre of books came from is from a man named Frank Peretti, which Frank Peretti, he wrote in the 80s a 2-book series called This Present Darkness and Piercing the Darkness. This is my bind-up edition of both books in one volume. It is a large book to read, especially since it's a hardback. It makes it kind of difficult. But Frank Peretti was kind of the author who started the modern spiritual warfare fiction genre in Christianity. So he is the one who came up with this idea of fictional angels versus demons, battles, spiritual warfare type books. And this book was actually not selling very well until Amy Grant, yes, Amy Grant, the Christmas, the lady who sings all the Christmas songs and also has the Baby Baby song and lots of other ones that are, Billboard Top 100 songs. She is the one who told people about this book at her concerts in the 80s, and people started to read this book, and it blew up like wildfire because of Amy Grant. So that is what leads us to the Forbidden Doors series. So in book number 1, The Society, Becca and Scott have just moved to Crescent Bay, California, where all of these books pretty much take place. There's a few later on in the series where they travel to different places, but most of the books take place in Crescent Bay, California. So Becca and Scott move into town, and they have actually just moved there after their father has died in the jungles in Brazil. And so they were a missionary family who lived in Brazil, and now they live in California. And as they're starting to go to high school and middle school, Becca is in high school, Scott is in middle school, Scott finds out that there are a bunch of kids at this local Ascension bookshop who are playing around with a Ouija board. And he believes that the Ouija board is an open door to talk to demons. And the people playing with the Ouija board believe that they're talking to people who have died. So Scott, he starts to talk to them about what's going on, and they start to find out that as he encounters this Ouija board, it spells out the word death. And the planchette, or the pointer on the Ouija board, flies at Scott and nearly gets him. And soon, Scott is finding himself in tons of near-death moments where he is about to die. And is it the power of demons? Is it something else? What is going on in this book? Now, I have to say, this is a Christian YA horror book. The other Christian horror books like Spine Chillers and Heebie-Jeebies, those are middle grade books, and really in those books, nothing super scary ever happens. These books are wild. Wild. Rereading it, I kept thinking, this is so terrifying. Like, these are two teenage kids who are pretty much fighting a bunch of demons. Like, that's what these books are about. So, this is a wild ride and a very spooky, creepy ride. There were moments, even though I have read this book, like, way in the past, and I know what's happening and I know what's going to happen, there were moments where I remember reading it this time thinking, oh, that's kind of creepy. Oh, I don't like that. So this series goes there and gets pretty intense, which I appreciate because I think a lot of times Christian books sometimes shy away from going there, especially when it's tiptoeing around the horror genre. And in this series, it really goes there, and things do get scary, things get real, things get intense. So meanwhile, while Scott is dealing with this Ouija board situation, Becca finds out that all of these high school students have the same amulet charms that they are wearing everywhere they go. And things are starting to happen that are scaring her because she recognizes those charms as things that are used to consult with demons. Yes, that's right. That is the plot of this book. Along the way, there is this super mysterious introduction of a person named Z who is chatting on the bulletin board with them, and I will say, this book is a product of its time because this is way before internet safety and before anyone was thinking about, there could be creepy people on things like bulletin boards, and you should not share your information with people. And in this book series, they talk to this person named Z, who is very mysterious. We don't know who Z is in this book. We only know that Z comes in and talks about the history of Ouija boards and talks about where this idea has come from. It appears that Z is a Christian who believes in God and tells them about God. And so Becca and Scott, they incorporate that information into their dealings with these demons and with this Ouija board and amulet situation. So this series, it really is like Fear Street for Christians. That's totally what was happening in these books. And I am so blown away that I never put that together before. That it's taken all this time to finally realize, that's what was going on with these books. Like, that's why they wrote these back in the 90s. Bill Myers is the author of these books, and sometimes Bill Myers, he is a very humorous writer, and he has a lot of other book series for middle grade kids that are very, very funny. Like, one of them is called My Life as a Smashed Burrito. So he really writes a lot of humor, and that does sneak in here, and some of that humor is dated to the 90s. So if you want a super 90s trip with humorous references to the 90s, those are in this book. So you also have pretty clipped writing that comes really quick, really fast. There's not a lot of deep like descriptions of settings or anything like that. It doesn't take its time and overstay its welcome. It is a quick, fast-paced read, very much like a Fear Street book. In fact, this book is even about 150 pages long, about the length of a typical Fear Street book. So this totally is what they were doing with this book series. It is totally a Fear Street book for Christians, is what's up. Although, I will say, it is not a straight up ripoff of Fear Street, because in these books, there are supernatural things every single time. Unlike Fear Street, where sometimes it turns out it kind of seems like there could be something supernatural, but then it ends up just being a murderer, which, I mean, is pretty creepy. But those usually tend towards thriller, and I would say these tend towards horror because of the demonic situations that the characters get into, and they are literally fighting against demons. So this book series is wild. But I also will say I enjoyed rereading this book so much. It was like one of those nostalgia reads where it's a book you read back in the day and you loved it, and you come back to it and you're like, oh, I really love this book. Oh, I just love these characters. I love what was happening in this. And I've already reading book 2 because I definitely had to keep going. I want to reread the whole series now because I've just enjoyed reading this one so much. It was such a fun reread. I barely ever reread books because there's so many books to read. I have so many books on my shelves that I still haven't gotten to that I want to get to. So I'm always like, why should I reread books when I can read new books that I haven't read yet? But these books are definitely worth it, in my opinion. So, who are these books for? I think if you are a fan of 90s horror books with hope in them, these are up for you. I think, too, these are a little different also than Fear Street in the sense that they have a continuing storyline. Most things get wrapped up in this book, but there are quite a few threads that continue straight into book 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So, okay, my lights totally just flickered just now. I don't know if the camera caught that. My heart's pounding just a tiny bit. I'm not gonna lie. Okay. I'm all right. I'm okay. I'm only talking about a book about demons. That's fine. So, this book series, I don't even know where I was anymore. I don't even know. So this book series really is kind of its own thing, along with being very similar to the Fear Street books. So that is a very interesting development, in my opinion, about these books, because they do stand alone. They're not just a Christian ripoff like a Spine Chillers or a Heebie-Jeebies are straight up ripoffs of Goosebumps. There's no comparison to not be Goosebumps. But these are like Fear Street, but they are their own thing as well. So, should you check these out? I would say, yeah, go for it. See what you think. I would say read the first book and know that they do kind of change a little bit as it gets to books 2, 3, and especially number 4. I feel like book 1 is good. I feel like book 2 is better. Book 3 gets even better. And book 4 is where it just starts cooking with gas. I think there are, I remember a couple in later on in the series, like book 8 and 9 and 10 are kind of weak, as usual, because I do feel like around that point in these kinds of series, authors sort of lose their way a little bit of like, what should we do? What else can we write about? We'll grab this, grab that, because we're on a publishing deadline. So there are some interesting things like that happen, but otherwise, these books really do start cooking with gas, I think, around book 3. And they keep going. They're so quick, so easy to read. They are not long at all. So you could pick this up and read it. I do recommend go for the old covers. So I would definitely give this a 4 stars out of 5. I think this was a great, fun reread for me. Nostalgia's definitely talking. So if you read this and you're like, this is garbage, Shaun, no, my nostalgia is talking pretty loudly here. So that is definitely for me. My ratings are always my own ratings. You know, other people might rate something differently, and that's okay, because different people have different opinions, and that's totally fine. Everyone can have their own opinions. So that's what I think of this book. Have you read any of these Forbidden Doors books? Have you ever heard of the spiritual warfare genre of fiction? It is a thing. There are multiple things. If you want something even more intense than the Forbidden Doors series, go for those Frank Peretti books. I will say Frank Peretti does have a lot of interesting plot lines that I will have probably some commentary on later on in the future. But for now, if you're interested, go for it. See what you think. Otherwise, until next time, everybody, keep reading. Bye.